Most people think becoming wealthy is about working harder, more hours, more hustle, more sacrifice, and they spend decades doing exactly that, working harder than almost everyone around them, and ending up roughly where they started. Not because they weren't trying, because they were trying at the wrong level. They were changing their behavior, when what actually needed to change was something deeper, the way they think. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean it as the most practical observation I can offer, because behavior follows thinking, always. You cannot sustainably behave differently than you think. You can force it for a while, through discipline, through willpower, through structured habits. But eventually, the thinking wins, every time. So if you want to understand why billionaires do what they do, why they make the decisions they make, why they see opportunities where other people see obstacles, why they move when other people wait, you have to start at the level of thinking, not behavior, thinking. And that's exactly what I want to walk you through today. Not in an abstract way, in a specific practical way that you can actually use. Starting with the first decision you make after this video ends. The first thing you need to understand about how billionaires think is that they have completely separated their identity from their current knowledge. Most people define themselves by what they know. I am a marketer. I am a developer. I am an accountant. I am an expert in this particular domain. And that identity, built around current knowledge, feels like stability, like something solid to stand on. But it's actually one of the most limiting things a person can do to themselves. Because when your identity is your current knowledge, any threat to that knowledge feels like a threat to you. New tools that change how your field works feel threatening. New approaches that make old expertise less relevant feel threatening. Change itself feels threatening, because every change is a potential attack on the thing you've built your identity around, and that defensive crouch, that resistance to anything that challenges current knowledge, is what keeps most intelligent people exactly where they are, protecting a position that the world is quietly moving away from. Billionaires think about identity completely differently. They don't define themselves by what they currently know. They define themselves by their capacity to learn, by their ability to move into new territory, by their track record of figuring things out. So when new tools arrive, when industries shift, when the rules of the game change, they don't experience it as a threat to who they are. They experience it as an opportunity. Another domain to learn, another problem to figure out, another chance to apply the skill that actually defines them. Which is not any specific knowledge, but the ability to acquire knowledge faster and more effectively than most people. That shift in how you define yourself, from what you know to how you learn, changes everything about how you respond to change. And we are living through one of the most significant periods of change in human history right now, which means the people who have made that identity shift are currently sitting on an enormous advantage, and the people who haven't are experiencing everything happening around them as a threat. Here's the second pattern. Billionaires think in systems. Most people think in events. When most people look at a problem, they see the immediate situation. This specific thing that is broken right now. This specific obstacle in front of me. This specific decision I need to make. And they address it at that level. Fix this thing. Get past this obstacle. Make this decision. And move on. Billionaires see the same situation differently. They see the event, but they're simultaneously asking a deeper question. What system produced this event? What underlying structure generates this kind of problem repeatedly? What would have to change at the system level for this type of problem to stop occurring? And that systems level thinking produces solutions that are fundamentally different from event level solutions. Event level solutions fix the immediate problem. Systems level solutions fix the category of problem. And there's an enormous difference between those two things, in terms of how much value they create, in terms of how scalable they are, in terms of how much leverage they give you over your situation. Here's a simple example. Most people who are struggling financially are focused on the immediate problem. I don't have enough money this month. How do I fix that? And they address it at the event level. Work more hours, cut some expenses, find a way to get through this month. A systems thinker looks at the same situation and asks a different question. What system in my life keeps producing months where I don't have enough money? Is it an income system problem, a spending system problem, a value creation problem, a pricing problem, a market problem? What is the actual underlying structure here? And what would have to change at that structural level for this category of problem to stop occurring? That question takes longer to answer, but the answer produces something that lasts, because you've addressed the root, not the symptom. Systems thinking is a learnable skill. It develops through practice, through consistently asking one level deeper than the immediate situation, through resisting the urge to fix the event until you understand the system that produced it. Let me talk about contrarian thinking, because this is one of the most misunderstood patterns in how billionaires operate. Most people think contrarian thinking means disagreeing with the consensus for its own sake, saying the opposite of what everyone else says, taking the unpopular position to seem smart or interesting. That's not what it is. Real contrarian thinking is much more specific. It's the ability to identify situations where the consensus is wrong, not randomly wrong. Wrong in a specific way. Wrong because everyone is using the same information to reach the same conclusion, while missing something important that changes the picture entirely. And the skill of finding those situations is worth an enormous amount. Because when you find something true that most people believe is false, or find something false that most people believe is true, you have what investors call an edge. A genuine informational advantage. And that advantage, properly acted on, produces asymmetric returns. Because you're not competing with everyone else for the same obvious opportunity. You're in a lane that most people can't even see yet. Here's how to develop this skill. Start with the question, what does everyone in this room believe? What is the consensus view? What do most people in this industry assume is true? Then ask why they believe it, what evidence supports it, what experiences led to it, what incentives might be distorting it. And then ask the harder question, what would have to be true for this consensus to be wrong, not what would make me contrarian? What specific piece of reality could the consensus be missing? What's not being talked about in the room? What's being assumed that might not actually hold? This process won't always lead somewhere. Most times the consensus is right, but when it leads somewhere real, when you find a genuine gap between what most people believe and what's actually true, that's where the extraordinary opportunities live. And the only way to find them is to consistently do the work of questioning what everyone else takes for granted. Now I want to talk about leverage, because this is the thinking pattern that most separates how billionaires operate from how most people operate. And it's the one that's least understood. Most people think about effort linearly. More work equals more results. More hours equals more output. More input equals more output. And in a simple world, that would be true. But we don't live in a simple world. We live in a world where certain kinds of effort produce disproportionate results, where the same amount of work applied in different ways can produce outcomes that are orders of magnitude different. And billionaires have learned to think constantly about leverage, about how to multiply the impact of their effort rather than just adding to it. There are several forms of leverage worth understanding. The first is other people's effort. The ability to build systems and teams where other people's work compounds your own, where your judgment and vision, applied through the effort of others, produces outcomes that would be impossible through individual effort alone. The second is capital, money that works while you sleep, invested in assets or businesses that generate returns independent of your active hours. The third is media and distribution, the ability to reach large numbers of people with ideas that matter, without requiring your physical presence for each interaction. One piece of content that teaches something valuable can reach 1 million people while you're sleeping, while you're working on something else, while you're with your family. That's leverage. The fourth is technology, tools that multiply what a single person can accomplish, that allow one person to do what previously required teams. We are living through the most significant expansion of this form of leverage in history. And the people who understand that, who are actively building their ability to use these tools, are developing an advantage that compounds every month. Billionaires are always asking the same question about their effort. How do I multiply this? What form of leverage can I apply here? How do I make this work harder than I am? Most people are asking, how do I work harder? The difference between those two questions is the difference between linear and exponential outcomes over time. Here's the thinking pattern that I think matters most and is talked about the least. Billionaires have developed a specific relationship with being wrong, a relationship that most people never develop, because most people experience being wrong as a threat to their reputation, to their self-image, to their sense of competence, and that experience of being wrong as threatening produces defensive behavior. The tendency to double down on positions even when the evidence has moved against them. The tendency to avoid situations where you might be visibly wrong. The tendency to stay inside areas of established competence where you're unlikely to be exposed as not knowing something. Billionaires have flipped this relationship. They experience being wrong as information, as the fastest way to update their model of reality, as the thing that tells them specifically where their thinking needs to change. And that flip from wrong as threat to wrong as information produces completely different behavior. It produces the willingness to take positions publicly, to put ideas in front of the world, to make bets that might not land, and when they don't land, to extract the maximum learning from the failure, rather than minimizing it or hiding from it, or pretending it didn't happen. This doesn't mean being reckless. It doesn't mean being careless with important decisions. It means having a relationship with imperfection that allows you to operate at a high velocity, to try more things, learn faster, adjust more quickly, and compound your understanding of how the world actually works, faster than the people who are moving carefully to avoid being wrong. Let me talk about one more pattern, and then I want to bring this together. Billionaires think about the future differently than most people. Not better. Differently. Most people think about the future as an extrapolation of the present. Things will probably continue roughly as they are, with incremental changes, gradual improvements, slow evolution. Billionaires think about the future as a destination that can be built toward. They form a specific picture of what they believe the world will look like, based on trends that are already visible, forces that are already in motion, changes that most people haven't registered yet because they're still small, and then they work backwards from that picture to figure out what needs to be built right now, to be in the right position when that future arrives. This is not prediction. Nobody knows the future. It's a specific kind of structured imagination, combined with the willingness to act on it, before the picture is fully clear, before everyone else can see what you're seeing, before the consensus has caught up, and that willingness to move toward a future that isn't certain yet, to build toward a destination that you can see more clearly than most people around you, is one of the most important thinking skills a person can develop. So here's what thinking like a billionaire actually means. It means defining yourself by your capacity to learn, not by your current knowledge. It means seeing systems behind events, rather than just reacting to events. It means doing the consistent work of finding where the consensus is wrong, rather than just accepting what everyone else believes. It means constantly asking how to multiply your effort, rather than just how to add to it. It means developing a genuine relationship with being wrong that produces faster learning rather than defensiveness. And it means forming a specific picture of where things are going and building toward that picture before it's obvious to everyone else. None of these are inherited traits. None of them require a specific background or a specific level of intelligence or specific connections. They're thinking patterns that can be learned, that have been learned by people who started with every disadvantage you can name and developed them one decision at a time, over years, through real experience, through honest reflection, through the consistent choice to think at the level that actually produces results, rather than the level that feels safe. Most people spend their whole lives trying to change their results, without ever changing their thinking. Now you know the difference. The only question that remains is what you're going to do with it.